Welcome back, vintage gamers. I have returned from Europe playing an Eternal Weekend 2023. I played both vintage and legacy and had a great weekend. I didn't come back with a trophy, but we got pretty close. So this is going to be a bit of like a blog style video. I'm just going to go over my trip, talk about all the cool things that happened, talk about magic, talk about tourism, talk about gathering. So no gameplay today, but if you're looking for that, I'm going to try to make sure that I make Friday's video a gameplay video. I'm going to put a bunch of timestamps in this video so you can hop around to the sections that interest you the most. I should probably have one that's about different places we visited and tourism, a big section on my legacy tournament, a big section on the vintage tournament. Of course, going over the decks that I played, the choices that I made. And then I'll probably have a little section at the end about some things that are going forward and a big announcement that doesn't actually pertain to Magic. So I think what we'll do is we'll just start with the trip. And I'm probably just going to go through some of the photos I took. I didn't take too many photos this time, but we're going to show off a little bit of the photos, I think. So let's see if I move this over here. Yeah. All right, sweet. So what happened? I flew out of the United States on Sunday evening, landing on a red-eye flight in Munich, Germany on Monday, and then we stayed for 2 days in the city of Munich and got to tour the city, basically. I've never been to Munich before, so it was a really awesome experience. Basically, anywhere you go in Europe, I've had a very good time as an American. We're very lucky that everyone, a lot of people end up speaking English, so it's not too hard to get food, get around, and then obviously the public transportation in Europe makes it so you can get around a city and from city to city very easily. So the reason that we went to Munich is because it was the furthest flight that I could get out of Boston in one go. So we took the Boston to Munich, and then we stayed in Munich for a couple of days, and then took a train over to Prague, where the Eternal Weekend event was held, and also was a very, very awesome city. I did learn just yesterday that there might have been a better choice. There's actually an express bus that goes from Munich to Prague that will take less time and no stops. But I don't even think about getting on buses because the American bus system is underwhelming, to say the least. So these are just going to be pictures walking around Munich. I just thought this weird. Probably a fountain was really cool. Obviously, there's going to be lots of amazing churches and things inside of churches. Probably just going to go through this quickly, but I don't know. It's nice to see. I think it's nice to see the different things that I got to see because for me, a lot of the time, these international Magic tournaments end up being a bit of a excuse to go abroad and to actually take a vacation and travel. So, I have to go to Europe to play Magic. Well, I guess I can see the city while I'm there. But I really do find that some of the best parts of these Magic tournaments are not actually the Magic tournaments themselves. They are exploring and getting to see all kinds of cool new things, and of course, hanging out with people in the gathering. So, just lots of pictures here from walking around in Old Town in Munich. We did unfortunately hit a little bit of a wet couple days, but we made the most of it. Always remember to bring your umbrella on a vacation. So I just man, some of this architecture is just so cool. I really like the concept of like town squares and things where there are no cars. It just gives you like this really awesome ability to walk between places and not have to worry about things. This is like the town hall, or this was the town hall, or an old town hall, or a new town hall, one of those things. So just a bunch of pictures from walking around in Munich. This is like the Palace Gardens. Super cool. Yeah. Just that was one thing that was really cool about Munich. They have this super. I didn't take too many pictures of it because it was actually getting dark by the time we walked through it. But there's this huge park, and it just spans like when you look at like the old town, it might be the same size as the old town, the park above it. It was just really awesome. I wish we had actually gone in the day when it was dry and we could just you could hang out. But this was our first dinner. We went to a restaurant recommended by someone from the Vintage Discord, which is very awesome. I really appreciate that. I am hesitant to pronounce anything because I can't pronounce English words, let alone other words. But this was like a cream cheese that had some like onions and stuff in it. Uh, just just fantastic. And then you eat it with the pretzel. Oh, so good. This was a really cool little restaurant. Had all these hops hanging from the wall. Just really interestingly decorated. Obviously, everyone was super nice too. The waiters were always down to help. Wiener schnitzel and like some kind of jam and of some potatoes. That was definitely something we recognized early on to this trip. Was the local cuisine is definitely meat and potatoes and beer. Meat, potatoes, and beer. Those are the things. And to their credit, both the countries had fantastic food. Um, I really enjoyed all of the local food that we tried. It did, however, at the end of the trip get to be a bit much, and I was like, I need to switch things up. I can't have any more local food. Give me something with spices. Give me some spices. But this was probably one of my favorite meals of the whole trip. This was just incredible taste. It was a lot of food though. I was food coming out after this one. On the second day, we did take a trip up past the city to Dachau, the memorial concentration camp. A little bit, obviously, not as fun, but I think probably very important. Um, I didn't take a lot of pictures in here, obviously, because it just that doesn't really feel like something I wanted to do. But I highly recommend the trip up if you are in that area ever. It was pretty easy to get to via public transportation and had a pretty extensive and meaningful museum in there. So uh, that's probably all I want to say about it, but I thought it was a pretty important thing to go see. After we went there, we went back into the city and we did a very quick tour of the residence, the Palace Residence Museum. And this was just the. I've been to a bunch of these kind of, palace museum tours in Europe, and they are always just mind-boggling. The affluence and opulence and I don't know all the big words to just describe the sheer money and gold involved. That was not the best picture. Cool harps though. I really like big battle paintings. That's something I enjoy. So I always like to take a bunch of pictures of like especially when those ones with the big ship battles and they have all the little people in the water, like all the care and put into them. Really cool place. I wish we hadn't have to speed run it just because it was closing, but we got to see the majority of it. This was pretty cool. This is a door. And this is like one of the ways you come out on one side of the tour loops. And when we passed this going forward, I had no idea there was a door there. But when we came back through the other side, I was like, what? We just come out a wall? Oh, I really like big landscape paintings too. Those are really sick. You can see Dan and I in the reflections of this mirror. Just so much gold. I think this is like the Queen's throne room or something like that. I thought this was cool. They had a little like a exhibit that was it was like silverware and utensils and plateware and that kind of things. And this is an egg holder. They made this little gold guy holding up a little bowl where you would place an egg. That's it. It's just to hold an egg. Yeah, look at this. Look, this is crazy. It's wild. Look at oh man. Yeah. It was pretty sweet. Just quite the variety of things. I guess when you own a palace, you do end up with a variety of things. And then at night, we went to the very famous beer hall. This place can hold literally thousands of people. I really actually thought this was pretty awesome. It's very touristy, right? So it's like the main tourist thing to do. But it does have this kind of really nice communal vibe where all these tables are seat yourself. And so we ended up sitting with I think some other Germans who enlightened us on various uh, cultural things, like when you're not supposed to eat this, how you're supposed to eat that. I thought this was really cool. These are terrible pictures though. Who took these? They have like a live band playing and stuff, and then you get, of course, the big mug of beer. This is the huge mug of beer. It's not. I don't think this is the biggest mug of beer I've ever had. I'm pretty sure I had a mug in Japan that was a little bit larger than this, but it's pretty close to the biggest mug of beer I've ever had. um, yeah. So we had some meat and bread, like I was saying, some sliced up meats and some different breads, and then we had oh God, what is the name? Now I don't remember the name. It's a sausage thing. Yeah, the YouTube comments are gonna tell me. I don't remember the name. It's a sausage thing. But this was interesting because the Germans next to us took a picture of it and they were like, "Oh, you are committing a sin." I'm like, "Oh no, like what did we do wrong?" But I guess the tradition is you're supposed to have this before noon, and the reason is because, back when there wasn't as much, preservatives in food, and then if you didn't eat this before noon, then it would probably have already gone bad. I doubt that's like a thing now. I'm sure it's more of like something that lasts forever, considering they they sold it to us at like 6 p.m. or whatever. But it was pretty good sausage. You're supposed to like cut the casing and then like kind of eat it like a banana in one go without letting it touch your plate or something. I don't know. I don't know if we were getting fooled by our fellow table mates, but like that kind of thing is just like, I don't know. It's not something you get everywhere because the way restaurants work, where you're seated, with your party and not other people, and I just kind of find that to be, it's a story and you get to tell it later, kind of thing. Yeah. So this is our next day. So we did basically like a day and a half or 2 days in Munich, and now we are taking the train. This is before we take the train to Prague. We were very happy with the train to Prague. I do like trains, especially more than driving, where I get to not be, focused on driving. We get to just relax. So we actually got a table on this train and we got to play some games. Dan had registered Jewel and I was going to play Pio. So we got a bunch of really awesome matches on the train. And actually made me a little happier about my deck choice because I thought the matchup was going to be pretty bad, and it ended up being just about okay. But this was like a really nice part of it. We got to spend, a couple hours or so testing on the train. The train itself worked really well. You have to make sure you get on the right car. Something I didn't know is like in Germany, it feels like a bunch of the trains have like certain sections of the train go to certain places. So like when you're going back to the airport, only the first two cars go to the airport and the third car splits off and goes somewhere else. And so on this train to Prague, only like two of the cars went all the way to Prague and a bunch of the other ones went different places in Germany. And I didn't know that before we got on the train, but we were like looking at the signs on the train, like something seems wrong. I think we should go further up. We did end up on the right car to get all the way to Prague, but that was something that could definitely have gone wrong if I just didn't know about it before. But it worked really well. No complaints about the train besides, it took a little while. And you got to see some really nice, just like small town German landscape along the way, which was cool. I mean, you're obviously through a train window, so I can't get the best pictures, but that was like the brief moment in time where we had the sun out in Germany. Basically, the rest of the time it just rained the whole time. This is me just booking the wrong type of room. I booked a room. I booked the room because I don't know. In America, when something says like, double or twin bed plus extra bed, the extra bed's like a pull-out couch or something, or like a thing on the floor. And so I booked this thing that was like two beds, or it was like twins and an extra bed. I was like, cool. So we're gonna get like two beds. And I got three beds, and the lady was so confused, and she's like, do you need a third card? Where's your third person? You booked this for 3 people. And I'm just like, it's fine. It's fine. I just messed up. But I don't know. Moving on. This was actually like right across the street from our hotel was a Czech uh a Czech restaurant, and this was so good. This was goulash, beef goulash, and you can kind of see the meat is underneath this pile of onions and chili peppers. And then these are what are these? These are potato pancakes. This was so good. Oh, this I don't know how to explain it. Just melt in your melt in your mouth meat with this just great sauce, and then you take the pancake and you swirl it into the sauce, and super good. Next day we did solo tours, or just us around Prague, and we basically walked most of the trip. We took like a nice long walk through Old Town to get to the castle and over the bridge into the castle. This kind of let us see everything along the way. Um, and then we did a tour of the castle. So basically, just going to be a lot of pictures of different buildings and things along the way. This is the main square in Old Town of Prague. There are just tons of huge historic buildings around this square. Big Freedom Monument. Just a really kind of just like a breathtaking sight. It's just something that it doesn't exist in the States, right? So this huge square with all these old buildings and really just kind of incredible. Cool monument too. Yeah. I just this was awesome. This is like a big tourist site in that square. This is an astronomical clock, I believe it's called. It's got all kinds of different hands and spinny things that tell different stuff, and there's like zodiac signs, and there's, when the day turns to night, and you can read like multiple pages about this clock. It's pretty wild. We also got to see the moving figures. I think that's called Glockenspiel. There's one of those in Munich too. We didn't get to see that one, but this one has like the apostles are rotating around the top, and there's you can't really see it, but there's a skeleton here that represents death, and it's ringing the bell, and pretty cool little thing. Oh, actually, you might be able to say it here. You got death ringing the bell. Pretty sweet. Some murals, big art. This is a bridge over. No, this is not the bridge. There's a very famous Czech bridge, and this is not the one. This is just a bridge looking over towards the palace and the cathedral. That is the famous bridge, which I was actually kind of happy went to this other bridge first, so we could get a picture of the bridge. This is a restaurant. That's a boat. It's kind of cool, I guess. Just some really nice early morning shots with the sun out. I really like this shot too with the flag. All right, so here's the tower on the way to the bridge. And then this bridge has got all kinds of statues lining it. The bridge is like older, the bridge is super old and super long. And the statues are less old, and they're like commissions at the time. So it's like a bunch of random saints and things. Just a really nice feel to it, especially in the sunlight and in the early morning when we first walked across it. Obviously, lots of peddlers and vendors along the bridge. This was like their one little canal over in by the palace, or the castle, I should say, not the palace. Well, maybe it is the same thing. Yeah, this was really sweet. We just got to walk up, and then boom, here's our nice overlooking the city shots. You have to climb. You don't have to climb. You can obviously take the bus all the way up, but we climbed up these staircases to the palace, which does make the view more enjoyable if you've worked for it. This was fun. These are just beautiful shots overlooking the whole city. All right, it's one of the pretty old church. That's the cathedral. Really, really nice cathedral. Super cool. Lots of gold, or at least fake gold, gilded maybe. Who knows? I'm sure the tour guide knew, but we we went here on the first day without without a tour guide or anything, and then we did like we took like the basic ticket and toured like a couple different places, which I think worked out pretty well. So I got to get a nice bunch of pictures here from inside the cathedral. Hitting a really great time where the sun is just coming through these stained glass pictures, and actually just making the walls and things different colors. Very, very cool. Just tons of stuff in here. Oh, that's just blurry. But like, what is this? I don't know. Is it cool? Definitely. Oh man. It's really hard to verbalize the magnitude of some of these pieces. I got a lot of shots of the stained glass because it just looked so cool. I don't know. Sometimes the camera did it justice, and sometimes it didn't. These things actually these etchings the camera actually made look better than I could see them, which was I thought really cool because it was hard to see in some of the light, and with these kind of it really shows them popping out. This is this is a different, you know, a painting, or not, I guess an artwork of the that bridge that I just showed you going over towards the castle. That's so cool. Really like that. Yeah, there's gonna be probably a lot of these because I take a lot of pictures when I'm in with the churches. Usually, they are just, again, something that the stage just doesn't have because it's just not that old, right? These churches outlived the country of the U.S. by hundreds of years, thousands of years sometimes. This is like, oh, this is in the palace. This is the only picture I took inside the palace area of the cathedral, and then this was another like church slash crypt. Bones. Gotta take pictures of the bones on display for everybody. This was pretty cool, actually. This is like a little it's called the Golden Road. It's in the back of the palace area, the castle area, and it's like got like all these like little merchant shops and houses and stuff. And there's a lot of history and how this little road came to be, and how people were all like crammed and living in it with like 1 foot of space each way. And it's just a really interesting little area. It basically, they turned like all of these shops into little museum things, and like the top row was all connected. Maybe it used to be the wall. Like these little shops were just like pushed up against the wall, and then the top row was all the wall, and they turned it into like an armor gallery for which there's so much weapons and armors and the moving oh, what is the word? I should know the word. Medieval history is something I'm actually good at. Is it portcullis? No, I'm forgetting. Anyways, this is where you shoot the arrows out of. But it was cool because it was wooden and and rotated on a gear, so you could actually aim your arrow slot. I didn't see an arrow slot like that before. A lot of times in some of the other castles in Europe, it's just stonework. Torture machines and stuff like that. This was cool. There was like a weapon area, and they for some reason there were just lots and lots of hybrid weapons where it's like an axe and a gun, or a sword and a gun. I don't know why exactly, but look at the axe and a gun. So cool. I'm kind of a history nerd. I grew up like some of my first video games were Age of Empires, the original. So I really, really like this kind of medieval history, battle history kind of stuff like that. This was kind of cool. They had some extra space, so they just put a crossbow range in. There's like half the hallway was filled up with a crossbow range, like a covered crossbow range, and people were just shooting crossbows. Wild. There were some weird helmets. Yeah, do a picture of a bunch of helmets. This is a house where Kafka wrote. I don't think he wrote Metamorphosis here, but or something else. Oh, maybe it was a country doctor. But that's kind of cool little place. Oh, this was just like a tower that had all the torture stuff in it. Ugh. Ugh. Ooh, yeah. Spikes. Definitely spikes inside this one. Yeah. Yeah. Cool though. Okay, so this is the looking entrance of the palace. Got all kinds of, honorary guards there and actual police officers and army people. Don't know exactly what kind of function that holds nowadays, but oh, and then this was a great area for nice panoramic shots over the city too. I think I have at least one. Yeah, that did not come out as good as I had hoped it would, but that's what I got to do. Then we met up with Honorog and Koval, who had just entered the city, and Tom de Decker, and we had some meat and potatoes. This was I think this was duck with crispy onions and these little potato fingerling things. It was really really good. I like that one a lot. And this is like one of the main squares in Newtown. Starts with a W, and I can't pronounce it. But it was actually pretty crazy because the Friday night before the tournament was the Freedom Day, the Independence Day. And so this place was packed, and there was a stage, and there was speeches and stuff, and it was kind of wild. I'm on a bridge. The picture of the canals. This is the John Lennon wall. Lots of cool for people signing over each other's names and about freedom. Yeah. This was like a dessert sweet. It's like a rolled up bread with tons of sugar on it, and then you put stuff inside it. It's all fried, and you put stuff inside it, so you just fill it up with like chocolate and whipped cream and whatever you want. Really, it could be like fruity, could be chocolate. That was extremely filling. I didn't have to eat after that one. It was so much. Then we met up with a bunch of the people who were taking a tour, big crew, and we went to this monastery where we had lunch. I just had a bunch of beer because I was still full from that dessert, but it was pretty cool. Met up with all the Brits there. And then we just walked back down. Now we're getting some city pictures at night. Back on the bridge, looking over. Did a quick little tour down of the Jewish quarter and some of the synagogues before heading back to the square. Getting to see everything lit up was really, really cool. And then, yeah, Sex Machine Museum. Didn't get to go in there, but we did walk by it. And this is what I'm saying. This is the square. And this is all the people who were there for the whatever was happening for the Independence Day. Where is this? Okay, and then at night we went out for the really big Eternal Weekend dinner. I think there were maybe 30 of us in total over a couple different tables. Maybe it was more than 30, but just people from all around the world basically getting together and doing some gathering before the event started. Appreciate Tom and his help in organizing something like that. This was deer and potato dumplings, and then it comes with a sauce. You choose you basically it's all you can eat dumplings, and there's like a bunch of different kinds of dumplings, and then there's like 3 different kinds of sauces, and they come and they pour the sauce on your plate, and then you eat the deer. Super good. There's the legend Gary Camel. Here's your log T1. It was great. We got to have Gary there. We got a nice jersey for him that we all signed, and we're always rooting for him to continue doing well, and happy for the recent surgery successes. Here is the first picture from the convention. This is Legacy. This is round 1 of Legacy on Saturday. 715 players. I think that's a good spot to bring up the legacy list. All right, so welcome. If you're joining me now, here's the legacy deck that I played in Eternal Weekend Europe. So this is 59 of the 60 cards that I played in my red-white painter combo deck. The 50th card that is missing is a Chaos Defiler, which is not on Magic Online, but is a completely busted card that I was definitely going to register this time. Last year, I did not register one, and I was extremely sad because it was sick. So this is a Chaos Defiler, a 5/4 trampler artifact creature. When it enters or dies, for each opponent, choose a non-land permanent they control and destroy one of those permanents at random. When you have one opponent, you just choose a permanent and destroy it. When it enters and when it dies, which is quite good in your Goblin Welder deck. So it kind of has that famous combo that, you know how in Vintage sometimes I play a Painter Servant combo and I go Welder into Engineer, put Citadel in my yard, Weld into play. You can do that with the Chaos Defiler. And the Chaos Defiler is really going to just beat some decks straight up from there. So this is not my list. This is a Julian list from, the Eternal Glory podcast, Callum and Julian. So I took Julian's last list that I was given, and the only change I made was I took a Fury out of the main, and I put a Chaos Defiler in, and then I hit copy paste and played my tournament. Thank you to Tom DeDecker for lending me this deck. I own very few of these Magic cards, so I'm always very grateful when someone lets me play with them. I felt like this deck was a deck I enjoyed. I have top 8'd a Four Seasons event with a similar red painter list. And I just felt like this was a deck where it made sense in my brain and I knew that I could play it well. And it seemed like theoretically was in a reasonable metagame position. The white splash of this deck was incredibly good. Swords to Plowshares was amazing all day, as was 4th Aeolinga's. The Phyrexian Dragon Engine is great. The Chaos Defiler is great. Obviously, Urza's Saga and Fable are unreal. The Painter's combo is actually just fine. I find it to be like one of the more underwhelming parts of the deck, but it does give you a bunch of free wins. And of course, everyone has to use all the removal on your Painter Servant combo, allowing you to play this like kind of a construct mid-range game plan. Actually, what I'll do is let me pull. Actually, no, I don't think I put anything in those. I have at least this, so I can just go over the rounds really quickly. Round 1, I played against Death Shadow Scam, and it was not close at all. My opponent I mulliganed, and then my opponent Grief reanimated me, and I died. It wasn't very interesting, and I was 0-1. I was like, oh man, this is not going to be a great tournament. Then I got to play against Bant Infect. What is a royal treatment? I didn't see this card. Target creature you control gains hexproof, create a royal token. Interesting. I believe this person was a local who just wanted to play in the event. Wow, they played the Infect Mirror in round 1. That's wild. That's cool. That's crazy. Cause I don't see any like a Legolas's bow here or anything. This looks a little. It does have Embiggen. It looks a little older, but was able to squeeze by Infect, and then I got to play against Scam, and this time I got a Revenge. That was pretty sweet. Round 4, playing against Preslav, pretty powerful wizard who was on the PO deck that I tested and actually have a video on. Cool deck. But I was able to. I can't exactly remember what happened in a lot of these matches, but we did play 3 games and we got through there. Then one of our mono red prison opponents. That's a weird matchup for sure. A lot of like your things that you're doing are just like not as good versus this kind of deck. But we played some pretty cool games versus Red Prison as well. One of my matches versus Red Prison, I got to do the Chaos Defiler on turn 1. It might have been this one, to be honest. I did like the Chaos Defiler on turn 2, and my opponent just like didn't have a non-land permanent in the play for the rest of the game, because like how is mono red going to remove my welder engineer looping 5/4 trampler thing? Just wild. Yeah, this was the second match versus mono red prison. I have to say all of my opponents for this tournament were very, very cordial. It was a great tournament. Everyone had a great attitude towards the games and made for a fun event. So I guess at this point, I had lost round one and then I had won five straight. So I'm now 5-1, and actually still live for top eight. It was a 715 player event, which meant 10 rounds, and you basically had to go 9-1, which was kind of wild. Round seven comes along, and I played against this mono blue 8 cast player, and I was extremely impressed by my opponent. They played this really solid and deliberate play style where they great little sequencings and always had all the triggers and was very verbal about the what was exactly was happening. We had a crazy like all out attack where they attacked for like 30 damage and I was able to block and go to 1, and by doing so I was able to um use my Chaos Defiler to kill a needle on Grindstone and get a Grindstone kill at 1 life, and it was a really awesome game. I didn't end up winning the set, but like I said, I was pretty impressed with my opponent's play in that set. So now it's round 8, and I am now X2, 5-2, and I'm dead for top 8. So just play the rest out to do the best we can. I played a Painter Mirror here, which was really odd. They always are. Painter mirrors are just they make your brain hurt because you don't really want to play your painter servant because you turn on your opponent's grindstone and you got to be really careful. You're like welding things in and out. This first game was really cool because I had like a painter but I didn't name blue, so they put a painter and named blue so they could try to pyroblast my City of Traders, and then I just like welded out their painter for a pedal. Pretty fun. I do think this matchup is like kind of hard. Just playing a painter mirror, you have to have a good idea of like what's going on, but it is really kind of can be pretty exciting. 9, we played against Grixis Delver. I can't remember really what happened in this one, but I feel like I got a little lucky, if I recall correctly, which is, you have to do that for a Magic tournament. And then round 10, we got to play against Boros Initiative versus a friend of the stream, Javier. And that was really fun. Honestly, because I didn't know what they were on, and I kept a hand that had a bunch of swords, and so my opponent, like mulliganed to 5 or something, but then played turn 1 4-drop initiative creature, turn 2 initiative creature, turn 3 initiative creature, and I had 3 straight swords to plowshares. But by the time I'm sorting to swords to plowsharing them, I'm making these like constructs or whatever, and they have like 35 life because I've cast so many swords. So in the end, I have to like grindstone myself to find a painter servant, and then use painter to kill them before they finished an initiative. They actually got a throne of the dead, or whatever it's called, throne of whatever. But then in game 2, or maybe in game 3, I got to do a pretty early Chaos Defiler, and it was really hard for them to push through the Chaos Defiler. They like null rotted me, but they kind of kept them off mana, and then I just Chaos Defiler their creatures, and eventually I Chaos Defiler their null rod, which may have been a mistake, because then they got to use a Chrome Mox and like go swords my Welder, swords my Chaos Defiler, and I had to win a different way, so pretty crazy. But all in all, a really strong finish, actually. I actually went 8-2, and I placed 30th with my 8-2 record here. So I actually won some money and was really happy that I had a strong performance. Historically, I'm not a player who has a amazing mental game. Going 0-1 to start the tournament in a match that was basically non-games is very hard to do, and make a comeback from there. But we did a nice 8-2 legacy finish, and now I'm actually kind of excited for Eternal Weekend in the States for legacy. I do need to go find another painter deck to borrow, but I probably will try to do that, and in doing so, I really thought that the games that legacy presented in this tournament for me personally were way more entertaining and more fun and more interesting than some legacy games and tournaments I've played in the past. And I actually am looking forward to playing a little bit more legacy. All right, we'll take a quick pick stop into the pictures real quick as we go to post legacy dinner. We were a little tired of meat and potatoes at this point, so we actually went to a Vietnamese place that was really cool and actually quite fantastic. This crispy duck was just so tasty. Just unbelievably tasty. Man, just thinking about this food makes me want to eat it. Oh man. Here's Franco, and we're on our way to Vintage. So, Vintage tournament. What do we play in Vintage? Well, this is the meat and potatoes of the of the magic part of this video. I was, if you had seen my last Friday's video, reinvigorated in my faith for Oath of Druids. And the main reason I felt so is because actually just a small sideboard change, adding in these Thought Seizes and putting this Bayou in the deck to support them, I thought helped me fix a lot of some of the problems with the deck was having. The deck was having some really solid matchups across the board, but the problem was combo. I felt that playing against Jewel or Beseech especially, and sometimes Doomsday, was challenging because my deck just didn't have a lot of the tools needed to fight those matchups. But by adding these Thought Seizes in, bringing in things like Thought Seize, Trap, Negation, and sometimes Vigor, Null Rot as well, I was ready to play those combo matchups in a way that made sense. These Thought Seizes were both a proactive way to stop my opponent's game plan, as well as a way to clear out counter magic to resolve my powerful spells. So this deck is 59 out of 60 of the list that I played at New York. So the only change is a C for a Bayou. I'm still not 100% sure where this Bayou is supposed to be placed in the mana base. Am I supposed to have UC, and then trade Bayou out for a fetch land? Or am I supposed to trade a UC out for a Bayou? I have to come through that still. But I was relatively confident that the Bayou was correct in the mana base. You really want to be able to get this spell that casts Oath and Thoughtseize. For instance, there was a time where I got my Tropical wasted. If I had gone Tropical plus Underground Sea, I would not have been able to play Oath on the next turn, and I would have lost. However, there are also hands like Brian Koval mentioned who played a very similar deck list, where if you have like Mana Crypt, Bayou, Show and Tell in your opening hand, and you go, why am I doing this? So I guess more thoughts on the Bayou at some other point, but the Bayou was there to help cast these Thought Seizes, and almost the rest of the deck is the same. One thing to note with this Oath deck is I'd cut the ley lines to support these Thought Seizes. In doing so, I did put in some extra cards for the Bazaar matchups in Sarah's Emissary, Tabernacle, and Sphinx. But this is definitely a lot less graveyard hate than before. I did put the Caracas back in the deck because I expected tons of Oath Mirrors. I didn't play versus tons of Oath Mirrors, but I was correct in that evaluation. Oath was the most played deck at the tournament. So if you have more thoughts, if you want to hear more thoughts about this deck list especially, there's tons of other videos of me playing this. There's the BCDL videos and some league videos. Let me actually bring up, I just did the data. So I do have a data sheet with this event. What I expected was to be fairly close to the online metagame with a high number of Oath, a high number of Blue-Black Luris Saga, and that was mostly true. This is what the metagame looked like. We played with 125 Vintage players. The most played deck by a large number was Oath at 21 players. That puts it at what, like some huge number, right? 17% of the metagame. Followed up by a large number of Countervine players, which I actually thought was surprising, but it makes sense when you think about it. Like, not everyone is going to be able to find power. This is a non-proxy paper Vintage event. So being able to find power is not always the easiest. So having Bazaars can be a lot more achievable than finding power. They chose to play Countervine over something like Dredge, which I found to be interesting because I think Dredge is a little bit better positioned, but 11 Countervine players. 11 players on Blue-Black or some variety of Luris Saga decks. Those are the Luris control decks using Lorien Revealed to play 9 colorless spell lands, Wastelands, Strip Mine, and Urza's Saga. 9 players on Jewel Shops. 8 players on a variety of other blue control decks. Some of those were Bant Beans. Some of those are the Questing Druid Luris decks. Beseech Storm also had 8 players. And then you start to go down from there with things like Initiative only having 7 players. That is a very low number of Initiative players. I can't imagine the number will be that low in North America. But in Europe, I'm less surprised. Players tend to want to play blue decks in Europe. That just seems to be a trend that I've noticed. When you look down here at 6 Breach, 6 Grixis Saga, that's just a thing you don't really see anymore. But it's a thing that European players do tend to like to play. So if you look down here, you have some win rates. And this was a great tournament for those players who chose to register Grixis Saga. Grixis Saga just being like a Tinker deck that plays the random restricted Grixis cards. Nothing crazy. Sometimes you'll play Hull Breachers and Bowmasters and Twisters. Some decks do, some decks don't. But you obviously play Tinker Citadel. Notably, the difference between Grixis Saga and Breach is that one plays Breach combo and one doesn't. However, there actually were a decent number of Breach players in this event that played no Tinker and played Lurrus instead, which is worth noting. We don't typically separate those Breach lists from each other anymore. They're not too common to see a Lurrus Breach deck. So like a dedicated Lurrus Breach deck, like 3 Breaches, 2 Brain Freeze kind of Lurrus Breach deck. But good results for that. Good results for Beseech. I mean, Beseech is going to have a good tournament if this is the metagame, right? Beseech has a great matchup versus Oath, and if you're gonna see 20 Oath pilots out of 125 players, this is definitely a tournament where registering Beseech makes a ton of sense. So Beseech really had a good showing, 57.9% win rate. Definitely was a strong choice for the tournament. I think Beseech put 2 players in the top 8. And then among the most played decks, Lurrus Saga had a pretty reasonable win rate, 53.4%. Oath had a slightly above 50% win rate, though I did notice in the Oath data that there are like a couple players who had rough showings, but they were on more of like brews of Oath decks. The Show and Tell decks had a slightly better performance, but among 21 players, it doesn't affect the data that much. Counterfine actually, I think, for this field did pretty well. 49% win rate with what I'm seeing here is, I think that's totally acceptable. I could have seen it going way lower. One thing to note for sure here is 37.5% win rate for Jewel Shops with 9 pilots. And some of these pilots are very powerful wizards. I looked and saw who was playing Jewel. That is an extremely low win rate. And Jewel Shops is one of the decks that is putting up huge win rate numbers on Magic Online. I don't know if it's because there were lots more null rods in this tournament. That's at least what a couple of Jewel Shops players told me, or if the deck just faltered. But that is a huge number, or a small number of. it's a bad win rate number. Okay, this is a pretty big outlier in this data set where everyone is plus or minus 9 over and under 50, and this is 37.5%. Like, this is something to keep an eye on for sure. So let's just go quickly over that top 8. Actually, it's a good time. There are 8 players here who made top 8. The top 8 was 2 Beseech, 2 Oath, 2 Tinker Saga, 1 Countervine, and 1 Lurrus control deck. The winner of the whole tournament ended up being the Lucas, who basically never dropped like one game the entire day, playing just a very straightforward Esper Saga list. It had like Teferis. I guess we should pull it up. We should pull it up, right? Let's pull it up. These won't be in order, unfortunately, because this is ordered by Swiss. But if I do this, Esper Saga, 2 Teferi, 2 Lavinia, 1 Hullbreacher, 1 Opposition Agent, all your normal Lorien, Saga, Tinker cards, some negations, pierces, and swords. But like I said, this is no innovation. I guess the biggest innovation in this deck list is 2 Wasteland and 1 Strip Mine. You can kind of get away with those a little bit better with Lorien Revealed. However, the mana base in this deck it's bad. It's definitely bad, and the pilot says so themselves. It's something to be careful on, but I mean, we are living in a world where Wasteland is super important and super powerful. So fitting any number of Wasteland and Strip Mine into your deck makes a lot of sense. I even played 1 Strip Mine in my Oath deck, so this was actually pretty similar to Franco's list that he posted from a 4-0 prelim the week before. In second place is HJ. HJ is an extremely powerful wizard. Holds at least 2 paintings, right? 2 Eternal Weekend paintings, and has been thriving in Vintage recently with the Lurrus control decks. He's a notable blue legacy player, and these Lurrus control decks work really well for Hans. Was playing more of the Joe Brennan blue black with bobs. So I'll show you that real quick. This is something I expect to pick up popularity online as it becomes the more winning blue black version. But this is like 4 bobs, 4 Oakish Bowmasters. You end up with a skull clamp in here, 4 force of will, 4 force of negation, a drown in the lock. Really, I know that Joe and some of the players who work on this deck did some work to make sure that this deck can play at its best versus a bad Oath matchup. You see there's 2 cages in here. There's a Feed the Swarm. So there's a lot of tech in here that I think pushes this deck forward away from like the original Mogged blue-black list. Motsu playing just a very classic Grixis Wheels deck, if I recall correctly. I don't remember there being anything, outlandish in here. Only 2 Lorien revealed is worth noting. The classic 1 Abrade, 1 Flusterstorm. No breaches, but you have Hull Breachers and Bowmasters to go with your 1 Time Twister. No Wheel of Fortune. That's just pretty straightforward. Grixis list. Also in the top 4 was Elliot. This was just Countervine. I thought the most interesting part of this Countervine list was there was no snapbacks. I personally wouldn't play a list without snapback, and it was obviously very relevant versus Oath, not having a snapback. But the rest of this is nice. I think 4 Mindbreak traps in this metagame is a good piece. So this was Countervine. I was in the top 8. Wait, did I say that? Wait, should I say that? All right, we'll go over it. I made top 8 of this event. I guess going over the top 8 before I go over my rounds is something. Good storytelling, Justin. But I played that Oath list to a top 8. It's just my Oath list. There were 2 other Beseech decks that were very straightforward. The normal stock Beseech list, and then the Oath deck, I believe, was a little bit different, but nothing super crazy. I believe this is like the Lorien revealed Gaia's Blessing version that was going around for a little bit. I'm not a fan of a lot of these choices, but it's not so far departed from my deck that, it's going to make a huge difference. So I guess we should go over what I did in this event, considering I just revealed the ending. Am I going to go back and edit this? No. No, I'm not. Let's go down here. Oh, round 1. This was an event where I felt like I knew most of the players I played against, but maybe that's going to be a continuing experience as I continue to have a sizable following in the community. So first match was against Rory, who I had recently had beers with at the monastery. Rory was on a Grixis Breach deck. It's just a Tinker Breach pile. We actually have, I think I have a picture of this match. Let's see. Yes, you can't see. This is just magic cards, but this is a stack at the end of this match where I am casting Time Walk with an Atraxa in play. My opponent is Pyroblasting my Time Walk. I am Fluster for 5, Fluster with 3 copies on my Pyroblast here. Then there's a Force on my Time Walk. There's a Force on the Force. Then there's a Fluster with 8 copies, which I had to write down over here. 2 copies on like a bunch. We had to write down where all these copies were going. And so there's like 8, 9 Flusterstorms here, hitting a bunch of my cards on the stack. And then I follow it up with this shiny pile of you can't read it. And it's a Mindbreak trap. And I Mindbreak trap the whole stack. And we win round 1. I had to get a picture of that, but I failed to get a nice picture of that, which is why it didn't go on social media. But you get to see it here. Congratulations. Round 2, I get to play against Pemin, who I have a lot of respect for. He's a very powerful wizard. He was on blue-black Luris. I won the first game, fairly straightforward. Lost the second game, fairly straightforward. How the blue-black matchup goes, get all your stuff countered. You can't win. And in the third game, I'm doing great. I'm having a beautiful time. I'm navigating it exactly how I want it to. I've set up my win. I have an Atraxa in play. I Thoughtseize my opponent, and I make a huge punt. Huge punt. There was a Time Vault. My opponent had 4 mana with a Lotus. There was a Time Vault and a Twister. And I have nothing left. So I said, I don't want to die to Vault Key because I'm traumatized by Vault Key. It's fine if they Twister. Like, what's the worst they can do? They're a blue-black deck. Like, they don't have anything powerful. I can draw forces and missteps and all of these things. And so I take the Time Vault and I let my opponent Twister off the Black Lotus. And my opponent hits so many good cards. They hit like a new Lotus, double Moxen, Time Walk. They re-get the Time Vault. and all they're missing is a key. And so they're spinning and trying to find a key, and I'm like sitting there with a 7-card wheel hand that had nothing in it, nothing at all. And so I just like sitting there, oh no, I blew it. I threw the whole game away. It's round 2. And I get lucky, and my opponent does not find the key, and I win anyways. But I was just like sitting there after that round, like, wow, I really regret that one decision. You can play a beautiful game, make a ton of great decisions, and then one choice in Vintage, and it all falls apart. So 2-0, good start. Round 3, we play on stream. This is a camera match. You can go check it out in the VOD recordings from Anurag, who did coverage, who is amazing. Anurag is doing coverage for North American and EU Eternal weekends. Make sure you go support Anurag, who is basically keeping this coverage alive for Vintage and Legacy Magic. Can't stress that enough, that Anurag is the GOAT. So this was a coverage match versus David, who is why am I blanking on the name right now? They have such a cool name. They make Magic content as well. Is it Thorn of Wrath? Yes. Okay, Thorn of Wrath. David is Thorn of Wrath on Twitter and Twitch, and I kind of figured that they would be on a Dark Ritual combo deck. And that was the case. They were on Doomsday. We played a really cool match in which I actually think I played extremely well, and I obviously got a little lucky. It's a hard matchup, but I just had like the right spots. I was able to play around Fluster really well. And you can check out that match on that YouTube channel or on Twitch, or probably on Anurag's Twitch VODs right now. Maybe it'll go up on YouTube later. Highly recommend it, though. It's good stuff. Great match. Super fun opponent. Like I said, all my opponents, really, I have nothing bad to say about any of my opponents. We had really, really good matches of Magic throughout the entire weekend. Round 4, I played against Raven91, who was on unpowered black-green natural order. This deck is so sweet. Let me just pull it up real quick. So this is like kind of like my Cradle control lists. It's very similar to my Cradle control list, except it's got, the full 4 Bowmaster now. And it's also splashing in the natural order 3 of for Crater Hoof and Atraxa. Oh, this was a little bit of a stressful one, but this is this is the first time in my life where my opponent went turn 1 Collector Roof, and I said, yes, great. I wasn't playing PO, so I was loving it. Collector Roof. I got to play an Oath of Druids, and it was a pretty easy game. I was able to strip mine a Demonic First Strip Mine and hit their Cradle, and everything was good. Game 2 was a little bit odd. I kept a kind of a weird hand where I had like a Bayou, 2 off-color Moxen, a Show and Tell, and a Portal of Phyrexia, and like opponent kind of mulliganed a bit and then didn't have a very fast start, so I'm just sitting there like missing land drops, trying to get all my stuff. Eventually I just Show and Tell a Portal and kill all their creatures and reanimate all their creatures and win. Big shout out to this player. I believe they ended up maybe 4-3 or something similar, but this was, I think, the biggest and best showing of an unpowered deck in the tournament, and maybe something people should keep an eye on if they want to play unpowered at North American Eternal Weekend and maybe win unpowered prizes. There are prizes this year for the highest placing unpowered deck. This could be an option. Keep that in mind. So that's 4-0. We're in a good spot. We have 125 players, so it's worth noting that this tournament is 7 rounds. And then it's so close to the breaking point of 8 rounds that there's going to be some tension at the top tables on whether or not you can draw. Round 5, I played against Francois, who I knew from the previous round sitting next to me was on Aggro Shops / Prison Shops hybrid deck. It's got Goloses, but it's more of an Aggro Shops Null Rod deck. I got pretty lucky, I would say. I kept a hand that had like Black Lotus, Off-Color Moxen, Probe, Brainstorm, Oath, and I went probe you, see all your Aggro Shop stuff, don't draw a land. Instead of just going crack and play Oath and then have nothing left, I brainstormed, and then I hit like really strong stuff. I hit the Orchard, played the turn 1 Oath, and won the game immediately. And then in round 2, or game 2, it just kept kind of like a Saga hand that would like get caged, but I just cast the Tinker for a Sphinx before the cage came into play, and it was pretty straightforward. This matchup is extremely bad for the Colorless Shops player. It's very hard. They do have 3 cages, but that's not really good enough in the current state of this Oath and Tell matchup. So I'm now 5-0, and I'm going into round 6. And most of the time, when you're in the situation, the four players who are 5-0 will double draw into top 8. However, I looked at the standings and during that round, and I had the worst breakers of the 5-0s, and there was a possibility that after the round ended, there would be 10 players at X and 1. So there were 19 players who had the chance to become X and 1. And if the player who is paired down wins, there would be 10 players at X and 1. If there are 10 players at X and 1, that means that after the next round, there will be 5 players at X and 1 who will have higher point total than the 4 people who double drew in. So that would be the 5 X and 1s who won their rounds all get in. And then the 4 people who drew, only 3 get in. And if I have the lowest breakers of the 4 people who drew, I would get kicked out of top 8. So I did not feel comfortable in drawing round 6. I don't know if that is 100% correct logic, but I don't have infinite time to figure that out at the venue with the tools available. And so that's the conclusion I came to. My opponent did offer to draw that round, and I declined. Obviously they were upset about that, but I think that's the decision I had to make with the information I had at the time. My opponent in round 6 was Pro Tour champion Samuel Estradi, who was an extremely nice opponent. I can't say that. And we played the Oath Mirror. I did know they were on Oath, and we played an Oath Mirror, in which I felt like I had a bit of an edge. I was pretty happy with how the game went. I did get a little lucky in game 1. We kind of exchanged resources, countered each other's spells. And I think I left my opponent with a show and tell target in their hand, and we were both on top decks, basically. And they didn't have a lot of mana, and I had a lot of mana. I had cast a Citadel, which got forced. And then on my top decks, I drew a Tinker. So I didn't have anything to tinker for. So I tinkered for a Sensei's Top with an open Forbidden Orchard and an open fetch land and passed. And my opponent did end up hitting the Moxen, and to show and tell and cast show and tell with 1 card in hand. So I spin my top and I find an Atraxa. If I had missed an Atraxa on that spin, I could have cracked my top and spun again, cracked my fetch and spun again. But I found an Atraxa. So we resolve show and tell. My opponent puts in a Citadel, and I put in an Atraxa. My Atraxa doesn't find a Force of Will off the 10 cards. So I actually have not too much interaction. And so my opponent has an open Citadel with a land drop, and they get to go. They start casting spells off the top. They're taking damage. And eventually they do find an Atraxa off the top. The casting Atraxa off the top puts my opponent to 3 life. Or eventually, at some point, they go to 3 life. I don't know if exactly right after the Atraxa they went to 3 life. But they do that. And so eventually they are down to 3 life, and they pass the turn with an Atraxa in play. I trigger my oath. I trigger their Oath of Druids because they played Oath of Druids off the top of their Bolas Citadel, and I had a Spirit token to give them. So they had Spirit Atraxa, and I had Atraxa. With that Atraxa trigger, I find a bunch more cards, and what I do is I DT for a force, and then I go Mana Crypt, Oko, turn your Atraxa into an Elk, and attack for lethal. Game 2, I think we just trade resources, and then I jam an Oko, and I just play Oko control, stand up a bunch of... I stand up some Moxen, I stand up one of the spirits they gave me, and I attack for lethal. And that puts me as one of the 2 players at 6-0 in our 7-round event, which means in round 7, I drew with the eventual champion, Lucas over here, and we drew into top 8 as the first and second seed. So not only am I in top 8 of Eternal Weekend, but I am in top 8 with the play for at least the first 2 rounds. Very happy, super happy, great day. We didn't lose a round in the Swiss. Quarterfinals are coming, and I am playing against Elliot, streamer from France, I believe. Mostly an arena streamer, but has been recently dabbling in some of the Eternal formats, who had just a crazy weekend. 8-2, I think conceded to let someone else into the top 8 or something in Legacy, because there was a bit of a problem with the tournament organization where the Legacy players weren't really able to play in the Vintage event if they top 8'd, which is not how it happens in North America. In North America, they're on separate days, and all the top 8s are played separately on the final day. So this caused a bit of a situation. So Elliot had split and conceded to someone in Legacy to let them top 8. But because Elliot wanted to play Vintage, but then two players from the Legacy top 8 still played Vintage after talking out with the TO, after the TO like got permission to give them a bye in round 1. So two Legacy players top 8 players got buys in round 1 in Vintage, and then they like played matches in between matches. It was a bit of a mess. Either way, all I really wanted to say about that right there was that Elliot had a very strong weekend, obviously. And we were playing the Counter Vine versus Oath matchup, which I think is pretty reasonable for Oath. We do have open deck lists in the top 8, so I look at this deck list and I see there are 0 snapbacks. So if I resolve any Oath creature, I am winning the game, basically. There is technically a Caracas in the sideboard that will bounce Atraxa, but like a single Sarah's Emissary in play on creature is game over. This is a good matchup, but I did cut my Leyline of the Voids, right? So I don't have Leyline of the Voids, which is unfortunate. This matchup is not on the Twitch channel. I think we were the backup feature match. But what happened was, round 1, I keep a turn 1 Oath of Druids with Petal and Orchard on the play, with a backup plan of going Land, Demonic, Lotus, Show and Tell, a Citadel. Totally reasonable hand. My opponent keeps a 6-card Squee hand, Force of Vigors, my Oath of Druids, untaps, wastelands my land, and then I do not draw another land for the rest of the game, and I lose. Game 2, I mulligan to 4 without finding a turn 1 or turn 2 play. On 4, I kept Tabernacle, Vampiric Tutor, Mana Crypt, and Jet, with an attempt to go Vamp for something like an Ancestral, probably, or maybe an Oath, depending on what's going on. And my Mental Misstep gets my Vampiric Tutor gets Mental Misstep, and I do not play another significant spell for the game. So I did not play any. Unfortunately, I did not play any real games, or not real games. They were real games. They were basically non-games in the quarterfinals. But I was obviously very lucky to get there. So at some point, variance is going to get you back. I don't regret my keeps or my mulligans. They just didn't get me there. My game 1 keep was good. I think having a turn 1 Oath with an Orchard is something I'm always keeping, especially when you have a turn 2 play to follow up with. My opponent made a very correct decision in not playing their Bazaar on turn 1 and instead going for the Wasteland and keeping me off mana. That worked out very well for them in that game. So props to them. Props to them on their top 4 finish. Because what ended up happening is they ended up in the top 8, where they played HJ on blue-black. That is a matchup on Hamra. You should definitely take a look at. Where they ended up losing to HJ. The Grixis Tinker player lost to the Esper Tinker player. And then in the finals, the Esper Tinker player defeats HJ 2-0 and becomes Vintage Eternal Weekend champion in EU. So for me, that means that I went 6-0-1 in the Swiss with 1 loss in the quarterfinals, ending the tournament 6-1-1. And then I finished the Legacy tournament at 8-2. So I ended up with a 14-3-1 record over the weekend, placing 5th place in Vintage and 30th place in Legacy, with 125 players and 715 Legacy players and 125 Vintage players. So it was a pretty big success, I would say. Just the Magic went extremely well. I thought my deck choice was fantastic. I think if a tournament is going to be full of Oath decks, I will gladly play Oath. I think I have a great read on how to play the Oath Mirror, and I'm more than happy to play against the best players in the world on the Oath Mirror. My top 8 prize this year is actually fantastic. Wizards are starting to put these commemorative cards as prizes. And so for the top 8 of Vintage this year is a 1 out of 24 copies, because there'll be 8 copies in each top 8 for each region, of Mental Misstep. So let me just pull up this. All right, here we go. There's my Mental Misstep prize, Eternal Weekend Vintage 2023 top 8. It's really cool. Old frame, Mental Misstep foil. Very sick. Very sick. And I think what I've decided is I'm probably going to keep this card. If I had won the event, gotten the Black Lotus and everything like that, then I don't know if I would keep this card. But as a commemorative top 8, it's kind of like a trophy, right? And it's going to be able to be used in every vintage deck I play in paper for the rest of my life, right? So while this, is probably valued at multiple thousands, I think it's going to go in my deck, which is actually kind of funny because it's probably like one of the more valuable cards in my deck because my power is not always it's well loved. It's well played. So yeah, I'm really happy. This is a really cool card, and I'm glad that they're starting to give out this top 8 prize, which makes the EV really big and it makes the EV a little bit flatter. If you have no top 8 prize, then all the value is in the painting. Then things get pretty awkward. So yeah, I came back from Europe and I didn't win, but I did top 8 and acquire myself a nice mental misstep. And I have more chances for Black Lotus paintings coming up soon because I will be playing in Paper Eternal Weekend at Pittsburgh in North America. I'm currently thinking Oath is probably a choice that I'm willing to make, but the metagame has the opportunity to shift in the coming weeks. We don't have, too long before Eternal Weekend, but we have multiple weekends. I'm going to watch very closely as Eternal Weekend happens in Japan and see if there are any, things that come out of that tournament, any storylines or deck changes, or, there's always a wild Japanese deck list or two. So I'm gonna just keep an eye on what happens in Eternal Weekend, what happens on Magic Online. Magic Online is very different right now than in paper. Magic Online, the metagame looks kind of Jewel dominated, whereas paper saw some serious numbers for things like Beseech, while Jewel just really, really struggled. So definitely things to keep in mind coming up for Eternal Weekend. So final section of this video is my upcoming plans. I do want to make sure I can keep putting out videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I do want to try to stream as much as I can before Eternal Weekend. However, the big news, huge news for me and the channel is that I was invited to Box's Set 10 boot camp for Team Fight Tactics. Now, if you don't know what Team Fight Tactics is, it is an auto battler produced by Riot Games. Riot Games are the game studio who produces League of Legends, one of the biggest esports in the world. And TFT is an auto battler that is extremely fun. I think it's a not a physical game, as in like League is very click oriented. TFT is a strategy game. TFT is a game that Magic players can probably really enjoy. It's actually quite similar to drafting. Basically what you do is you draft units and you put them on your board and then they automatically fight for you. So it's like chess. It originated from a genre that was called auto chess, where the chess pieces play themselves and you have to position them. This is an extremely big opportunity for me, as this is a huge event. This is a $40,000 prize pool event with some of the biggest streamers in the entire world. There is a casual, an advanced, and a pro section. I will be playing in the advanced section. So basically the advanced section is people who are not professional at the game. Typically they're streaming another game, but are still quite competent. I have played this game for a couple of years now, and I usually hit master, which is like usually around the top 1,000 players. Well, I usually find myself around the top 1,000 players in TFT. And some of the people who are in my section are just huge, like 5up, I think, has maybe 1 million Twitter followers. If you're a League of Legends player, you might recognize people like Meteos, the historic Cloud9 jungler. If you play some other card games, people like Majin. Just a really cool opportunity here. Wolfie, the Pokemon player. Because what they did, and what I'm very thankful for, is they have 40 streamers in each category, and they separated them between small, medium, and large streamers, and gave some preference to people who are playing outside TFT, so bringing in new audiences. So that might be you. If you are interested in watching me play in this tournament, basically what it is for the next 2 weeks, we're having a ladder race, and every couple days the lowest players on the ladder get knocked out, and after 2 weeks the highest ranked player gets to win the money. So I'm going to be streaming this game a lot in the coming few weeks. Right now, actually, the next 2 weeks. So if you see my stream notification go up and it's not magic, I'm sorry. But I think this is going to be a lot of fun, and hopefully you might come and enjoy that as well. So I'm going to be streaming this a lot. But what I'm going to still try to do is make the vintage videos. They might end up being off stream, or maybe they're just the challenge videos. But I want to still try to put out the vintage videos every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'm going to try to balance this between this event, my vintage content, and my normal 9-to-5 engineering job. I'm going to do the best I possibly can. But I just wanted to make this section so that you, my audience, know what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. I'm hopefully going to get a lot of exposure here from around the gaming community. And I think I have a decent chance. I wouldn't say I'm the favorite in my division. I would say there are players like Wuhujin, who's a Valorant streamer who had a really good showing last year, and Wolfie. But I would think that I have a legitimate chance of finishing near the top of my division. So I'm going to put a bunch of effort into playing this TFT tournament, and I'm going to be putting out a lot of streams out. Probably some 3-4 hour streams multiple days a week to try to stay on top of the ladder and see how high I can finish. So if that is interesting to you, make sure you check out the Twitch channel and come hang out for streams. They will probably be during random times of the day, especially with American Thanksgiving coming up. So that's something that will be happening over the next 2 weeks. I will, of course, continue to put out content, and I will do probably do at least in one more like metagame post about before Eternal Weekend. After Japan comes out, probably the week before Pittsburgh, I will do another post. What I did before this tournament was I put a post on Patreon to all the $5 subscribers who normally get my weekly metagame updates. And what I did is I went over every single deck in the format and how I thought they position themselves in the metagame and if I recommend them or not. So that post is still there, and I think the information is all still valid. If that's something interesting to you, you can go look at that post if you subscribe on Patreon. Again, thank you to everyone who doesn't, anyone who watches at all. I had lots of people talk to me in Europe, and I was extremely, I guess, invigorated and really wanted to get back and make more content, because it does seem like it's something that people find value in, and I really appreciate that that's the case, and appreciate everyone who supports me, whether it's just following and subscribing on this channel and on Twitch, or if you support in other ways like Twitch subs or Patreons. Thank you for that continued support, and I hopefully we will continue to make awesome vintage content and TFT content in the coming weeks, and hopefully I can bring home the trophy in Pittsburgh. Thank you for watching. More gameplay videos for vintage every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on this channel. I will see you then.